lately I'm working on gratitude because I do have a tendency to worry about a lot of things. And so when I just do a little mind shift from anxiety or worry to gratitude, I feel like a little bit of peace.
Yes.
Breaks through.
What is it that makes you feel good about your life, that you're on the right path, that you're providing the mission, you're living the mission, your purpose in life?
Sometimes honestly I struggle with that a little bit, but I think really what does bring me joy is when I spend time with Karen and my dog and friends, family, when I can be of service, which I think I really need to work on. When I feel good is when I am helping people in some way, whether it's helping them, eat healthier, or just helping someone grow, mentoring somebody at this point in my professional career, right? So I think the more I can be of service to people, the more joy I have. And
welcome to the Cardinal Way for Men, Next Man Up, candid conversations with men. And it's a pleasure to have my friend Charles with me today. And it's, we met since we've both moved down from New England. Actually, Charles is originally from that area, also actually Long Island. And we've really connected, had some great conversations about what it means to be a man, some of the challenges that we as men experience. And he lent me a book that is about the men's issues, and I haven't had a chance to dig into it yet because I just finished We Need to Hang Out, which is a book that I just lent to Charles, so he'll read that. But welcome, Charles.
Good morning. Yeah, it's great to chat.
So for you, what are some of the challenges? Some of the challenges that you've come up against, sort of breaking some of the stereotypes or some of the cultural conditioning that we've experienced as boys and men?
The first thing that comes to mind, Ed, is while I'm we run together, and I like to stay fit and sort of have that mentality of staying kind of a little, tough, if you will. Yeah. But, I can't tell you, who's left in the NFL right now. I can't tell you, the top basketball players. So in a way, like a lot of times you get into these men conversations at work with your boss. Like my boss is a great guy, but he played football for Penn State. So it's like a lot of the conversations sort of go back to like professional athletics, and so I kind of never find my way in there. I don't have, I appreciate it. I'll sit down and watch the game with you today, but, so in that way there's some sort of like, the guys club stuff, right? Which I never really fit into. Yeah. So, how do I deal with that? In some ways I try to just be aware of, maybe I'll take a look at the sports page just so I can, not be like totally out of the conversation. But, sometimes it's just honest, like, hey, I used to follow all the football games, but it's not of interest to me really anymore. I'm too busy and do other things with my time. Right. But there is a lot of that. Like there is a lot of, hey, you don't golf? Like, I work at a resort, yes. So like a lot of business is still done on the golf course.
Right, yeah, exactly. That's definitely a manly thing.
Yeah.
So, what's got you interested in some of the books that you're reading about what it means to be a man? I created a meetup group for men, and you were a part of that. What kind of drew you in that direction? Was there a moment, or was it something that was just in you? When did that start for you?
It's funny, my wife will probably come up in some of these conversations because she'll give me a nudge now and again, and then that, I think she's like, guys don't have any friends and you're all going to die young. You have no community, you have to have relationships and friendships. And so you're like, You know, I do. I've worked with so many people. I most certainly have some friends, but we've moved with my work, and so those relationships become distant. And you know, I do believe in the value of having some trusted friends.
Yeah.
You know, because life can be great. Life can throw you curveballs. So I think when life throws you a curveball, you might just need to swallow your pride and have some friends that you can reach out to.
Right.
And then the other way around, when you're feeling rooted and solid, you know, maybe one of your friends is going to be going through a tough time. We
Right.
just don't know what's
Right.
coming our way, right? And you want to be able to, you know, now I wouldn't say reciprocate, but you want to be there to be a friend, a support.
Right.
So over the last few years, you know, I know that there's a real value in that. So like anything that's worth having, you got to put in work a little bit, right?
And that's what that book that I just lent you is all about. It's about why is it that men don't have these connections? You know, what is it that they've learned growing up that, you know, we don't need to rely on anyone else. We can be independent. We need to be tough. But because of that, men are isolated, disconnected, lonely, and their physical health, mental health, emotional health is suffering because of it. And it's interesting that it's your wife that's sort of reminding me about that.
Yeah.
When you know I first moved here, I saw my wife Jude connecting with all of these women around here, and I'm like, why can't I connect with other men? Is there something wrong with me? And that's why I created that meetup group. And it's much harder for men to do that, I think, because of the culture of conditioning. Did you have someone growing up as a role model, what it means to be a man? And what were some of the messages you got from that person?
Oh, that's a good question. Wow. I don't know. I mean, I think, you know, your dad definitely comes into the question.
Right.
My grandfather, you know, most certainly they were role models. You know, maybe my wrestling coach in high school was a bit of a role model. So, as far as like my dad and my grandfather, I think, you know, I think there was always a, you know, be about your business. Definitely there was a generational thing, which I think I really appreciated. You know, now it's not, you know, now it's not politically correct, but my grandfather would be like, don't be a sissy. Like, get in the game, get up.
Yes,
you know,
exactly.
Which I think that kind of gave me some grit.
Yes.
But it was never you know, never was like, don't be the macho man, right? Those are the guys that just don't make it the long haul.
Right.
Like, don't be the ego guy. Be humble, but don't be wimpy either. In a sense, like, you know, be focused, be a gentleman.
Yeah.
You know, even like open the door for a lady.
Right.
And, you know,
Right.
Nowadays, I think you get in trouble for doing that. It's like, well, I can open my own door. No offense, ladies. I don't mean that in a bad way. But yeah, so I guess, you know, my dad, my grandfather, and then I would say as I got older, to an extent, my older brother is only 4 years older than I am, but you know, he's a good solid guy, and you know, he's done a lot of things on this level of connecting with people. So he's a career military, you know, so he's a soldier.
Yeah.
Retired from the army and was a chaplain, as I shared with you. But he's always done things to connect with the soldiers and to connect soldiers with soldiers.
Yeah.
Whether that's like sleeping in the field, you know, in negative degrees, and jumping out of airplanes, and again, you know, he's a very humble guy. He would never brag on any of his accomplishments, but you know, I watched that, and his like honor and integrity is like the rule of his life, to always tell the truth and always be trusted. So I think, you know, I've seen that. So
you know, you mentioned your father and grandfather, and that grit and that masculine, which I think it's important for men to acknowledge and foster. But the thing that I feel is not accepted is more of the emotional, the feelings.
Yeah.
Expressing the feelings, men are supposed to cry. How
I cry all the time.
well, the more you get to know me, you're going to know that that's something that at one point in my life I apologized for it.
Yeah.
And it's a thing that I was ridiculed for by my father if I did. But how comfortable are you with that around other men, expressing feelings and emotions and crying? Are you okay with that?
I don't know. I would say, like, to be honest, it's probably somewhat guarded,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
It depends. I think it depends on the audience.
Yes.
Right?
We've had that. Don't mean to interrupt, but we've had this discussion because you work in a corporate environment, and what we're talking about is really not probably not acceptable or seen as weakness. So you don't want to be that way in a corporate setting. Would you agree with that? I mean,
I think it depends on the corporate setting and to what degree.
Yeah.
I at the same time always try to be true to myself. So I don't try to be, all these weird it gets all convoluted, right? Like the man, the feminine side. Like I'm in touch with my feminine side. I'm also in touch with my masculine side. And how do you balance this out?
Exactly.
How comfortable I am exposing, like, hey, do I cry? If we go to a sad movie and a dog dies in the movie, I'm going to be like, I need some tissues, I'm crying for sure. So I think I kind of, to be honest, I try to be true to myself, which is being empathetic to people. But I also am somewhat, whether it's right or wrong, definitely I always maintain a little distance in environments where I'm not really sure of, what the takeaways will be and if it will have a negative effect.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's just, right, wrong, or indifferent. I don't think I'll put walls up, but I definitely will just maybe take a half step back, more observing.
Whether it's a safe place or not.
Sure.
Yeah, kind of like sensing that piece. Do you have you are into running and working out. Do you have a morning ritual? Are you into yoga, meditation? What do you do to take care of your physical body?
Yeah, ideally, what I actually do. So what I do for sure is, currently it depends, ebb and flow. Sometimes I'm like really rooted down in my zone, very fit, and I think right now it's sort of in the middle of the road to maybe the bottom side of the, what I'd really like to be the optimum. But I always try to make sure I work out, run, do some yoga, like at least 3 times a week, minimum. I try to, at least once a week, sit and meditate or listen to a meditation. I try to do, seen some of the books at our house. Just pick up a book, random book off the shelf, and read sort of, here's how to be grounded today, or here's how to be grateful today. So lately, I'm working on gratitude because I do have a tendency to worry about a lot of things, and so when I just do a little mind shift from anxiety or worry to gratitude, I feel like a little bit of peace breaks through.
Absolutely. I've been following Dr. Joe Dispenza, and I've been listening to some of his podcasts and some of his audios and videos, and he talks about that. Gratitude is a really positive way to change your mindset. And when you're grateful, it's the law of attraction. When you're grateful, first of all, you're going to raise your energy. You're going to feel better. And then you're going to attract more things to be grateful for.
For sure. I mean, when you start, it all sounds so hokey, but right now I would say I'm not in that space. But the more and there have been times in the last few years where I actually had a little more time and I was a little more disciplined about having that quiet time, going to more yoga classes, or just literally just having peace and quiet and sort of getting a meditative mindset. there's a little bit of like this intuitive thing, I think, that kicks in. You start having, as I can't explain it, but you kind of start having a little bit of an elevated level, for lack of a better word, like intuition.
Oh,
I kind of get a sense of, and I kind of, wow, I knew that was going to go down that way, right? So it's a lot easier said than done, for sure. I'm not gonna, I'm not pretending like I'm in this, evolved, blissful state, but I do have I do understand that when I can recognize it in myself.
Yeah.
When I do get into like, hey, let's shift from being worried about this to just being grateful for now, and I feel the difference. You know?
That's a great point about intuition, and that's another thing I feel men are really disconnected for. Women are more connected with women's intuition. They call it, because I think they're more in touch with their emotions. They're more connected to their heart, and I think that's the heart speaking. The heart listening is when you have that intuition. It's not the head. It's not the ego. And the more work you do on yourself, as far as the meditation, the yoga, the introspection, feeding your mind positive material through what you read, what you listen to, your intuition is going to get heightened. And if you can live from that place, amazing things will happen, and you'll head in the direction that you're supposed to be heading, right? You'll be living the life you're supposed to be living. How about I know you and your wife, Karen, are in the food industry, so your diets are pretty good, I would say.
Yeah, well, that's for sure at home. We eat mostly plant-based diet. I wouldn't say like completely vegetarian or vegan, but So I was a chef for a lot of years, and I started to dig into what am I feeding all these folks, and boy, that takes you down a rabbit hole, because the reality of for most places, especially because I've been in hotel world for a good number of years now, if you're doing any kind of volume of food production, a lot of that stuff, the animal products are coming from factory farms, right. And so there's a lot of, we can talk about that for days. Yeah. But as far as home life, most certainly we try to eat whole foods and plant-based, and definitely have a balance of grains and seeds and nuts and legumes, and I believe it has a hugely positive impact on your health, the environment, the animals. So that is a personal conviction, and it always is a little bit of a tug of war, because I think it is somewhat different from the world that I live in. Yeah. And so I always try to figure out how to balance being truthful in my personal life, and then how does that roll into my work life? I haven't quite figured all that out yet. Right? It's not. I don't know if it's for me to change the world. That's always.
Is that your mission in your life?
Yeah, is that my mission? Is it is it appropriate? And to what point do I put my personal beliefs into the professional environment that is not functioning in that space? Right. So, you can see there's always a little tug of war when I have the opportunity to influence the direction of all those things. I do. When it's appropriate for the workspace. Yeah. But most certainly, I believe it. It wasn't like, the funny thing, it just happened, really. It just evolved. To go back to what I was saying, like I started looking like, where's this chicken coming from? Where are these vegetables coming from? Right. Now, obviously, when I was working more in unique boutique places or freestanding restaurants, like literally the farmer would come to the back door. Right. And that is maybe a different discussion, but it just evolved. So I just started watching all the documentaries and reading the books, and you're like, oh wow,
educating yourself.
Yeah, you just start. For me personally, it's not like I always get cautious not to sound preachy on this stuff, because it's personal choice, right? But for me, I believe that it's one of the most incredible things like you can do.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, the way you eat is definitely in alignment with my wife and I, definitely. And it has evolved. She's trained the Natural Gourmet Cookery in Manhattan, which teaches cooking with whole natural foods. So because of that background, that's kind of helped the way we eat, because she learned how to cook that way. And one of the nice things about living in this area is it's very much a lot of organic farmers and artisans making amazing breads and cheeses that are more natural based, not with a lot of the pesticides and GMOs and stuff like that. So that's been a gift living here, going to the farmers markets, supporting local farmers, and which I highly recommend doing. And I think there's a lot of farm to table for the restaurants here because of that.
Oh, for sure. There's so much going on here in this region. Yeah, it's fantastic.
So what are you passionate about? What brings you joy?
You're dropping the big questions.
Well, we warmed up a little bit.
Oh, yeah, the little warm round. Kapow! What brings me joy in life? That's a big question, I think. Because I don't know if the definition of joy is just like laughing and joking with your buddies, or joy is a level of like satisfaction, peace, right? I think it's maybe a little distinction there, like, oh, you should be joyous. Well, what is that? So
I'll distinguish for you. It's what makes you feel good inside, what you're passionate about. So it's not just you and I get together, we share a latte, and we have fun, and I mean it does bring joy. But when the point I'm getting to is that what is it that makes you feel good about your life, that you're on the right path, that you're providing the mission, you're living the mission, your purpose in life.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes honestly I struggle with that a little bit, but I think really what does bring me joy is when I spend time with Karen and my dog and friends, family, when I can be of service, which I think I really need to work on. When I feel good is when I am helping people in some way, whether it's helping them, eat healthier, or just helping someone grow, mentoring somebody at this point in my professional career, right? So I think the more I can be of service to people, the more joy I have. And most certainly my relationship with Karen is when we have that time together, we actually really enjoy our time, right? When we stop, it's really on me, in full transparency, because I'm the guy that's still running around, busy, which is not really, shouldn't be your mantra nowadays. Oh, how's everything? Oh, good, I'm busy. It's like, it's not really. Yeah. But when we do stop and just go out, and it doesn't, it can be having coffee. Like we can have such a wonderful time. Right. So definitely, I would say, the family time, the friends time, and when I feel like I'm being of service.
Yeah, that's a big one. Being of service. Like you said, mentoring someone, giving of yourself in a way that's selfless, passing down your knowledge. Do you feel like you get enough of that at work, or is that do you have a dream or like a vision of how you'd like to do that more?
I think I do. I don't know, like I don't have a mentee per se, like I don't have someone, but we do that. We do have those programs, right? But sometimes I think about it in terms of, because everyone is watching all the time, right? Like it or not. And so I feel like while I do pull some folks and have these conversations about, hey, this is where you're doing well, this is where I think you can maybe, look at it from a different angle. Most certainly I have those conversations. I had several of those conversations this past week because it was time to do some one-on-ones. But I also think like how I conduct myself, back to like everyone, like it or not, I am aware that people watch how you conduct yourself. Yes. Right? So sometimes my example is the mentorship, because whether it's in a big meeting or it's in a one-on-one conversation with one of my leaders, even up the ranks, right? It's like what does that influence?
Yeah.
And so I think I always try to, definitely there are some days where I just go, man, fail. Bad. Shouldn't have said that. Could have been more patient here. But yeah, I don't know if that answers the question.
I mean, that's life. That's how we learn, right? Just from our mistakes. And I've had plenty of failures, and I'm going to continue to fail the rest of my life. But that's how we learn. The great opportunities for growth. So before we wrap up, is there any other thing you'd like to add, or something for the men out there that you think might be helpful? Men who might be struggling in their lives.
I always hesitate to give advice because most certainly I feel like I have so much growth to do still. However, I think it's always safe to say, like, just be yourself. Right, be true to who you kind of, if you can just get some quiet time, you kind of know what resonates with you and what doesn't resonate with you. You kind of have to be true to yourself, because if you start living everybody else's expectation, you really, it eats at you, right? And it becomes not physically not healthy, mentally not healthy. So you have to try, even though the world's a busy place nowadays and we're disconnected and we have political opposing views on just about everything. Everybody has to choose a camp or silo, right? And so we're in kind of a strange time, in my opinion. But I think if we were chatting, and I would just say, like, whether I do a great job at it or not, I'm trying. And I think just having the awareness of just anchoring down to who you are and trying not to get sucked into what everyone else's expectations. It could be your family's expectations. It could be your wife's expectations. It could be your friends, your workplace. So we have to flex, but most certainly, if you can be rooted and come back to your core, so you don't get lost in all the whirlwind and the cartwheels that everyone is doing. Right.
Great words of advice. Just coming back to yourself, and you said if you can have some time in silence, which a lot of men avoid because it's scary, because you're then starting to, you're starting to get to know yourself. Macron, this is uncomfortable. But the more you can do it, the more you can practice, like you said, and then you start to listen to that intuition, that small voice inside you, and you get that sense of, what is it that I'm supposed to do, and what is it that I'm supposed to say in certain situations, and it's a practice to
follow my own advice.
It's a practice. So. Well, Charles, I appreciate you taking time to be on the Next Man Up, and I'm going to post a link to my men's letter, which is a bi-weekly newsletter for men on different topics, health related, and so I'll pop that in the description. And until you see me again, be well. Take care. Bye bye.